Thank you, Susan. I am a collector. Before I get started, I just want to say that I have pulled out all the stops for today's sermon, including the most technologically advanced slides. So here we go. We're going to have some really detailed slides, but I will try to make it fun so that we'll all be engaged. I'm a collector. I love to collect things that other people might not actually think are very valuable. My type of collecting is things that you can contain things in. So like boxes and bags and jars. Sometimes my collecting means, let me see if I can get that a little bit closer. I'll show it to you. Sometimes my collecting means that my garage gets completely filled up with so many things that, sometimes it's just accumulated over time. I think some of you probably know the kind of collecting I do from personal experience. Sometimes it just accumulates. You think, you know what? I inherited this from Aunt Gertrude, and I certainly don't want to throw it away. Formerly useful things. I used this for years, so I can't throw it away now. It's got sentimental value, or maybe it'll be useful again. So sometimes there's salvaged things from other useful things, right? So instead of just throwing the appliance away, you want to harvest like the cord or the screws or something like that. Now, I know all of you know what I'm talking about because everybody does this, right? So sometimes my garage gets so full. I remember when we were getting ready to move from one place to another, from a big house to a small apartment. And my job was to clean the garage. And so I realized that in order for me to clean the garage, I needed to get some space, right? So I started pulling things out one at a time and pulling things completely out of the garage, just setting them in the driveway. So the bicycle came out, the lawnmower came out, the wheelbarrow came out, the old mattress that I had, two mattresses that I had in there came out, and the bed frame and the office rolling chair and the swimming goggles and the tools and all the things that came right out into the driveway. And finally, I had some room to work. And it was a daunting project, and I got really dirty. But I realized that when I didn't have all that stuff in my garage, there was this sense of freedom. It's like I still had the stuff at that moment, but seeing the empty garage, or at least the well-organized garage, there was a sense of freedom in that. And it was almost like I finally got a chance to kind of see what the garage was intended for instead of what I had been using it for. And when I had bought the house, I did not intend for the garage to become a storage unit, right? It didn't always, things that went in there didn't always need to go in there, but they went in there because that's where they ended up. And so the thing is that the things in the garage were not bad stuff. It wasn't piles of garbage. It was things that had been useful at one point. But when I was getting ready to move into a new phase of life, some of those things that I really, really liked having around, they needed to go because they were no longer serving a purpose in my life. Sometimes we can think of our mind as a mental garage. Sometimes the things that accumulate in our minds are things that were useful at one point, or they're sentimental. They've been there for a long time. And sometimes the things that we have gotten used to having in our minds are no longer serving the purpose that they used to. And so the question is, what kind of stuff do we have in our mental garage that need to be cleaned out? Some of the stuff that we have in there will replace loved ones in our lives. I remember a time when I was training students in the trucking industry as a long haul truck driver. So my job was to bring them on the road with me for 6 to 8 weeks and show them the ropes. They had already gotten their CDL, their commercial driver's license, but now it was time to learn the ropes, learn the real work. And so I had a student on the truck with me who I became really good friends with. And she started talking to me one day while we were driving down the road about the relationship that she had with her daughter. And she said that she and her daughter were a bit estranged. Not a bit, quite a bit estranged, because it had gotten to the point where she wasn't allowed to see her grandkids. Her daughter just didn't want to have anything to do with her. She wouldn't take her calls. And so the relationship was completely deteriorating. So we dug into that a little bit. Come to find out, it was weird because my friend's mother had spent quite a bit of time while she was alive collecting Beanie Babies. Are you familiar with the Beanie Baby explosion, where they would come out from time to time and you would collect these Beanie Babies, and they were said to be worth a lot of money, and so they were very valuable collectibles. And my friend's mother passed away, and the feud was that her daughter thought that her mother had left the Beanie Babies to her. But my friend thought that she had left them to her. And so because she had possession of the box of Beanie Babies in her garage, she wasn't giving them up. She said, if I give them to my daughter, her kids are going to play with them. They're going to get them all messed up. My mother spent years collecting these Beanie Babies, and I am not just going to hand them over so that the kids can ruin them. They are going to be worth a lot of money. And I said, how much money do you think they're going to be worth? She said, hundreds of dollars. And I said, wow, that's a lot. And I said, how much are you paying to store them in your garage? And she's like, wow, I'm paying a lot more than $100 because I don't even get to see my grandkids. Sometimes the Beanie Babies have got to go. Sometimes the greatest act of love is to give the box of Beanie Babies to your daughter, come what may of them. That does not mean that you're betraying your mother's memory or all the hard work she put into collecting all these Beanie Babies. It just means that the purpose that they served for your mother are not serving the purpose for you. So it's better then to say, these are really nice collectibles, and I'm just going to give them up because they are not serving me the way that they were intended. Sometimes the stuff that we have in our garage represents a certain place or time that we are moving on from. My mother and father, my parents moved a few years ago from a house that they had owned for 35 years. And they were moving into a small retirement village, into a small apartment in a retirement village. And I was there along with a couple of my siblings to help move basically not to help them move, but to help them clean out their garage and their closets and their cupboards before they moved. And one day when we were there, we lined up a whole counter full of coffee mugs onto, let me get this a little closer so you can see. I'm sorry that my advanced technology is a little bit far away. But these coffee mugs, we lined them all up on the kitchen counter and said, Mom, you do not have enough room for all these coffee mugs. So why don't you pick out your favorites? Oh my goodness. I can't take all of my coffee mugs? No, Mom, you have to pick a few. And so she went through carefully picking up each one and looking it over, looking to see which ones were chipped and which ones had sentimental value. And she found a collection of coffee mugs that she wanted to take with her. And all the others got donated or given away. Now, coffee mugs are not bad things, but sometimes they represent a certain place or a certain time in your life, and it's time to move on. So you have to give up some of the things that are holding you back from moving on. Sometimes the stuff in our garage limits our thinking, limits us to thinking that there is only one solution to a problem. If you remember in our opening story, in our opening words, we talked about a man who was at a pool, the pool of Bethesda. In our New Testament story, the paraphrase. Let me read it again because there's a few things that I want to talk about here. One day Jesus went up to Jerusalem where there was a pool called Bethesda. Near the pool lay a great multitude of people who suffered from a variety of ailments. They waited there because every now and then it was said that an angel would descend into the pool and stir up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was cured of whatever disease they had. Now a certain man was there who had suffered from an infirmity for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, he knew that he had been in that condition for a long time. He said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. While I'm struggling, someone else steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked. Now there's a lot of things that we could unpack from this story for our conversation today. But in the interest of time, I just want to unpack a couple of things. One, the man had been sitting there for 38 years. How many things do we have in our garage that keep us sitting in the same place for decades? The question is that Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be made well?" Why would he ask him that? The man had been sitting there for 38 years, waiting by a pool to find healing. Why would Jesus ask him if he wants to be made well? The truth is, sometimes we get used to our circumstances, right? Sometimes we get used to sitting there and we think, you know what? I've been here for this long. It won't kill me to stay here for the rest of my life. But is that really where we want to stay for the rest of our lives? The other thing is, when Jesus asked him that, "Do you want to be made well?" the man didn't actually answer his question. He didn't say, "Of course, yes, show me the way." He didn't say that. What did he say? "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. When I'm struggling, someone else steps down before me." Instead of answering Jesus' question, he just offered up the excuse that he has had for 38 years. I have been trying. I've been trying to get well. I've been doing all the things that is said that I need to do. The answer to my question is to get in that water, but I have to wait until the angel stirs up the water, and then I have to be the first one in. It would be great if someone could help me, but nobody's helping me. Everybody is just pushing me out of the way so that they can jump into the pool. So it's not my fault. I am sitting here. I've been sitting here faithfully for 38 years waiting for my opportunity. But thank you very much for coming along and asking the question, because here I sit, still waiting. Now, it's interesting that Jesus did not respond to his excuses. He said, "Rise, take up your bed, and walk." And then immediately the man was made well, took up his bed, and walked. Now, this is considered in the New Testament as a miracle story. But let's ask ourselves where the miracle is exactly. Is it Jesus who performed the miracle, or is it the man who, instead of arguing with Jesus and saying, "Listen, you are not hearing me. I cannot walk. I have been sitting here for 38 years. If I could walk, I would be up and walking by now. I wouldn't be sitting here. You wouldn't be finding me waiting at this pool while I am sitting here waiting for healing. There is nothing I can do. You are an idiot to come along here and tell me to get up from my bed and walk. Here I am." Instead, he was like, "I wonder if there's a different solution to my problems. Maybe I should get up and try. It has been impossible for 38 years, but maybe now is the time someone comes along, sees me, and decides to stop listening to my excuses and challenge me to do something different, to think outside my box." What was holding the man back? Perhaps it was that he had thought that there was only one solution to his problems. But then someone comes along and challenges him to think differently. Some of the stuff in our garage holds us in the past. One of the things that I loved as a kid was watching my dad preach, especially when he would preach about Jonah. He had a sermon that he preached about Jonah that I loved. He went into so much detail. He is a storyteller to this day, an incredible storyteller. And he started when he was preaching years and years ago. He started by telling lots of stories in his sermons, and I loved my dad's preaching. So one day, I was asked to preach a sermon for at my school for the chapel service, and I asked my dad if I could borrow his notes for his sermon that he did on the story of Jonah. My dad said, "Well, I'd be happy to show them to you, but really, it's your sermon, so it's time to step out into your own." And I was like 15 or 16 years old. And I'm like, "But no, I want your sermon notes." And so he showed them to me, and I looked at them and they were so confusing. It's like, I didn't understand. They just an outline. It wasn't something that I could necessarily read. So I decided, well, these notes aren't going to help me. And besides, I know the story by heart. I've been listening to his story of Jonah my whole life. And so I'll just tell the story. I'll just get up there and tell the story, and they'll love it. They will love it because it's a great story. So I got up there, intent on telling the story of Jonah and all about how Jonah decided to go the opposite direction of the way that God was telling him to go. And so I got up there without any notes, and I stood up there and I lost the entire story. My schoolmates, my peers were so bored because I stumbled through a vague outline of the story of Jonah, and I got completely lost. I got it all mixed up. Nobody knew what I was talking about, and it was a complete bomb. I was mortified and humiliated. I had decided that I just wasn't cut out to be a preacher. My dad could do it, but I wasn't cut out. Those of you who know my story also know that I was born and raised female. And so in my family's faith tradition, women weren't preachers. So the whole idea that a woman could preach a story, could tell a story of Jonah, I mean, it's probably because I was a girl. So I might as well just give up. So years went by, and I put little Brent's sermon, that bomb, that failure, I stuck it in my garage and decided that I just wasn't cut out to be a preacher. Until eventually I decided, well, I'll write out my sermons. If I want to be a preacher, I could write them out. A lot of people write out their sermons, and they do a really good job of, reading the script and making it look like they aren't reading a script, right? And so that's what I did. I came up with a solution that I would just read out my sermons and people would be happy. And they were. A lot of people were happy. They give me a lot of accolades for my preaching style. Now, let me remind you, I am not saying that reading sermons is bad. I did pretty good at it, I think, right? But when I decided recently, within the last decade or so, that I wanted to divorce myself from the script, I wanted to be able to connect with people when I would talk. I wanted to be able to engage with people visually without looking down at a script. It was just something that I wanted to develop for myself. But I sat at the pool and decided that I would need another class before I could do that. I would need to do another class on public speaking. I would need to do another class on, I need to read some more books, because that's how you learn to do things, right? You read books and you take classes. There was only one solution to my problem. And that was, I needed more training. Well, it turns out that as I was preparing for today's sermon, my partner, Desiree, I wrote out my entire sermon for today. And I said, okay, now I'm going to read you the sermon and you tell me what you think, right? And so I read the entire sermon. It was not the sermon I'm giving you today. It was a much different kind of sermon, which wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, right? But she knew that I wanted to divorce myself from the script. And so she suggested it. Why don't you just give your message without reading it? I'm like, oh, wait. No. Oh, I will get there someday. I am not there yet. I will get there. But I've got to take a class. I've got to read books. I've got to work myself into that. I can't just willy-nilly tell stories. That won't be a sermon. She's like, okay. And I said, by the way, I've tried this. I tried this when I was 15 and I bombed. It was miserable. It's like, okay. I said, besides, I am a much better writer than I am a speaker. Please believe me on this. We haven't known each other for years yet. You'll discover that as I go along, I am a much better writer. So let me just stick with that. She's like, all right. She said, so Brent, what's in your garage that you need to clean out? What is holding you back? Some of the things in our garage are very useful for a time. And they are not bad. They are not bad things, but they're holding us back. For me, what was holding me back was some of the things some of the excuses that I had, that girls aren't preachers. Little Brent bombed. right? Better speaker, better writer than I am a speaker. The crowds will be bored. All these things, you know, all these things have got to go in order for me to move on, in order for me to grow, in order for me to be the kind of speaker that I always wanted to be. And sometimes the things in our garage that have to go are a certain kind of theology. Some of the things holding us back are not bad theologies, but they don't fit us anymore. So sometimes even the things like Jonah have got to go. The way that that story is told has got to go. For me, I've got to find my own story of Jonah. There is a certain freedom cleaning out years of stuff. Freedom from letting go of the things that worked for us in the past so that we can embrace the things that will drive us into the future. What's in your garage that needs to be cleaned out? What's holding you back? Thank you.